When the UFC releases a bout order for an upcoming fight card, a lot of us are wondering, what the? It's not uncommon to see a ranked contender fight its way to the prelims, if not the early prelims, instead of the main card where it should be. And meanwhile, your favorite unranked heavyweight fighter finds a nice little home on every single fight night card, right in the main card. Hey guys, my name is Chris. I am the owner of MMA Ecosystem. I've worked in the MMA media for about 2 years, also as a manager and longtime fight fan as well. So welcome to the channel. If you enjoy this video, definitely hit subscribe and like the video as well. In this video, I'm going to talk about UFC bout orders, a very contentious topic that often breeds a lot of confusion among fans, including myself. But I think there are some hidden factors that fans don't always realize that goes behind the planning of a UFC fight card. So I'm gonna get into that. I think if all of us could design a fight card, we would rank it from the highest ranked contenders down the way, all the way to those making their UFC debut at the bottom, or those on losing streaks at the bottom of the fight card. That makes sense to us, right? Make the best main card that you can. Give the fighters that have gone on win streaks or are highly ranked, give them their deserved shine and hype up future big fights in the UFC. That makes sense to me, probably makes sense to you as well, right? So for example, here is the fight card for the UFC Kansas City fight night. You'll notice a couple interesting things. First of all, most notably the Matheus Nicolau versus Brandon Royval fight, which is a fight between top 5 contenders, is on the early prelims. A little bit strange. Also, we've got a couple unranked fighters on the main card. Some very interesting choices, to say the least, about how this fight was ordered. I would think if all the fans could reorder this fight card, it would go from this to looking something like this, where Nicolau and Royval are higher up the card, potentially even in the co-main event, because we all know this fight's going to be entertaining. It's between top 5 contenders, potentially a future flyweight contender, and so why not hype up that fight? But I'll just let you know that this is not how the UFC plans their fight cards. It's not to please the hardcores. They have a very different purpose in mind. So to explain that, I'll pivot to another topic: social media, or in my expertise, Instagram. I've been on the Instagram platform for a couple years now, studied a lot of the ins and outs, learning the algorithm, how posts are ranked, and I've learned a couple things about Instagram. The goal of Instagram as a business isn't just to showcase your content, but it's to actually keep people on the Instagram app as long as possible. When you open Instagram, the creators and designers of Instagram want you to stay locked into their app as long as possible. They want you to be entertained. They want you to scroll endlessly. They don't want any kind of gaps in your entertainment or attention, because the way that Instagram makes money is off of advertising. So if they can keep you on Instagram for a long period of time, they have a lot more ads to show you. More ads, more money from advertisers if they can keep you on the Instagram app. In the same way, when the UFC has a fight card, they're not just seeing it as entertaining fans promoting fights, but they're seeing it as this 7-8 hour long canvas to put ads. And so for them, that's the way that they see the fight, is if they can attract more advertisers, they can make more money and create potentially better deals for them in the future with future broadcasting partners. So when they think about a fight card, they're not just thinking, how can we order this from least interest to greatest interest, but more, how can we keep people engaged throughout the entirety of a UFC broadcast? For them, and with their research, they don't want people just tuning in for the top 3 or 4 fights. They want to try to entertain people for the entire length of the card, to get people watching, as crazy as it sounds, for 8 hours straight. For them, it doesn't mean that they're just selling a couple ads at the top of the broadcast, but they're able to tell advertisers that they'll have audiences dialed in for the entirety of an 8-hour window. That is much more attractive to them, and so they've planned their bout orders likewise to keep you engaged for the entire time. There's a lot of factors that go into that. Obviously, social media following is one of the biggest factors that dictates the UFC bout order. Also, likelihood of a knockout, likelihood of entertaining, tenure of athletes, also which market is this targeted towards. All of those factors kind of key into how they arrange a bout order. So let's look at a couple case studies, shall we? I briefly want to look at the UFC Kansas City card and the UFC Vegas card planned for April 22nd. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my phone where I've got all of this listed out. You can see on here I have written out a couple factors that may come into play that decide a UFC bout order. I've highlighted, of course, ranking. I've put how many thousands of Instagram followers each fighter has, and also if they're a local fighter as well, which that doesn't really come into play much for the UFC Vegas cards, but it does a little bit more for the times that the UFC travels around. So kind of an interesting case for this UFC Kansas City card, because of course we all know what happened with Glory MMA and Kansas City MMA last year with the whole James Krause thing. So a lot of those fighters have gone to other gyms like American Top Team or Factory X Muay Thai. There are a lot of fighters on this card from Factory X Muay Thai, which is in the Denver, Colorado area. So I'm including them as part of the local dubbing on this card. So obviously the main event, you have Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen. The fighters that I've highlighted in red are fighters with more than 100,000 social media followers. Those with more than 50,000 I've highlighted in orange. So you can kind of see the flow of things. What the UFC wants to do is they want to put a fight with a lot of social media followers at the beginning of the prelims and also at the beginning of the main card. Get you hooked, get you drawn in at the start of sort of a new chapter of the fight card. And then you'll see sort of in the middle of the fight card, you'll see sort of this balloon of social media followers where a lot of times the fight with the most social media following is in the middle of the prelims or the middle of the main card, thinking that if you're tuning in for that fight, you're also going to tune in for the fights before and after it. Again, getting you plugged in for the whole card, not just the beginning or the end of the card. So let's look at the prelims. So you might think that the Brandon Royval versus Mateus Nicolau fight is the highlight of the prelims. It's actually not. It's actually the Jillian Robertson versus Pierre Rodriguez fight. That one has the most collective social media followers. For the UFC, they look at all of those followers, assuming that a lot of them are going to tune in to watch their favorite fighter fight. They're selling ad space against those social media followers. So again, the whole entire fight card versus just a couple fights at the top. Something interesting about this fight card is there's a lot of fighters from Spanish-speaking countries. Almost makes me wonder if this event was maybe targeted for a different country, maybe Mexico City, somewhere in South America. Definitely interesting to think about because you've got Jocelyn Edwards, Gaston Bolaños, Bruna Bazil, Denise Gomez, Daniel Zellhuber, Pierre Rodriguez, Mateus Nicolau, Pedro Munoz, Rafa Garcia, Edson Barboza. So it could be that since there aren't a lot of fighters from the Kansas City area that are actually training in Kansas City at the moment, maybe they're instead targeting the Spanish-speaking population in Kansas City, hoping they'll show out for the fight. But yeah, there are a couple fighters from the Kansas City area or that train at like Factory X Muay Thai. You've got Dustin Jacoby, Chris Gutierrez, TJ Brown, Brandon Royval, Zach Cummings. All those guys kind of train in the area. They're also targeting those guys, putting them on the fight card to try and sell ticket sales. That's a whole nother thing. So let's look at the main card as well. You've got Clay Guida versus Rafa Garcia opening up the fight card. Two veterans, really high probability that this will be an exciting fight. Clay Guida, kind of a fan favorite, long tenure. They're putting him at the beginning of the main card as an opener to get you to watch the main card from the start. So I think that's a great call. And then if you look at the main card, it's kind of sparsed out with some of the ranked fights. And then of course you've got the Tanner Boser, Jan Cutelaba fight, which I put KO next to it because this is the fight on the main card that has a high probability of a knockout. When they make these main cards, it's like they're selling you an entertainment package that might have a knockout, a couple really good fights, some really like high ranked contenders, and then of course the main event as well. So they're selling you a product to get you to tune into this main card. The prelims are a little bit more that hump where the start and middle of the card have the most social media following to get people to tune into the whole prelims. So that's why they've put Brandon Royval versus Mateus Nicolau on there. The second to last fight right after the highest engagement between Jillian Robertson and Pierre Rodriguez. I personally still would have put that fight on the main card. I love flyweight. It's one of my favorite divisions in MMA. They're the second highest ranking fighters on this whole card behind Max Holloway and Arnold Allen. So I don't know, what gives? All right, let's go to the next week's card, April 22nd. This is the UFC Vegas card headlined by Curtis Blades and Sergey Pavlovich. So I was wondering if the same pattern would follow, and I was surprised to see that it kind of does. So if you look at these prelims, this is the way that they unfold. At the beginning, you've got about 54K combined fans, and then that slowly increases all the way up to the middle of the prelims, where you've got Junior Tafa and Muhammad Usman. That's a combined total of 225K social media followers. And then that slowly actually decreases down to the top of the prelims, the Christos Giagos versus Rick Glenn. And then once you get to the main card, they decided to put the KO slot, which I'm dubbing as the KO slot, Matthew Semmelsberger versus Jeremiah Wells. That just has knockout written all over it. So they put that fight at the beginning to draw people in, and then as it goes on, the social media following actually hits its crescendo in the middle of the card with the Jared Gordon and Bobby Green fight. That one has 300K total followers, and that's more than any other fight on the whole entire card. So statistically, perhaps the most people might be watching the middle of the main card, not even the main event. They're hoping that all of those people will just stay engaged into the main event. So again, you have to think about these cards from total engagement rather than ranking from highest to least. I'm hoping to actually look at some more UFC fight cards to see if they follow the same pattern of kind of ballooning in the middle of a prelims and then tapering off, and then a strong start to the main card and then ballooning in the middle of the card as well. It's an interesting way to look at it. I'm not saying this is all the same conclusions the UFC has come up with. This is just me looking at 2 out of many fight cards. But hey, I'm with you guys. I don't work for ESPN. I get nothing out of having the most watched fight be in the middle of a prelim card. Personally, I'm with you. I want to see the fighters that deserve it get the top billing on the card, but what gives? I'm not the one making money off of ads, so. And I'm also watching the fight from top to bottom anyways. I don't know, do you guys have any thoughts on this? Do you think this is total BS? Do you have any ideas or other points of why the UFC may order their fight cards this way? Let me know in the comments. Until then, have a great day.